If you have a shallow enough keel, then a trip to Beaumont Quay can be a real treat. It's at the end of the long and ridiculously sinuous Landmere Creek, paralleled by a half-mile-long canal, parts of which were dug by British slaves working for the Romans. Today there's 8 metres of clearance under the 3-phase power cable, carrying more than enough electricity to fry the slug, its owner and his son. The slug mast is only 17 foot long, mounted on a cabin roof 5 feet above the water, then a foot for the pennant and a spring tide and all that. Adds up to a stupid risk to take, but there you go.
It's quite close.
There's been a quay here for millennia, well before the Romans arrived to take over the production of English wool, Welsh gold and East Anglian salt. The plucky British traders put up with the annoyingly sinuous channel for hundreds of years, but the Romans thought it was rubbish and things would be much quicker and more efficient if a canal was dug. How did the slave-driving Romans, with their desire for efficiency and almost Teutonic love of straight lines, ever decline into the delightfully slightly disorganised olive-gobbling Italians we know and love today? Just one of life's little mysteries, I guess. Later on, a lime kiln was built here. We've only had cement for 150 years or so. Before that, lime mortar was made by layering wood and limestone gravel into kilns and setting fire to the lot. At around 1,000 degrees, CO2 is driven off, and the resulting lime can be mixed 3-to-1 with sand to produce a pretty good substance for sticking stones and bricks together. Actually, a pedant would tell you that it really works by holding them apart, but I'm not a pedant. Later on, coal replaced the wood, but batches were still restricted to 30 tonnes a time, otherwise the piles collapsed under their own weight and stopped burning. This one was used mainly for agricultural lime production, restoring balance to the acid soils of East Anglia, but it would have been used for buildings as well. Stacking the layers of fuel and graded lime gravel was an art in itself. Too hot or too cold, too dense or too light, and the process fails. Most kilns took a day to load, 3 days to burn, 2 days to cool, and a day to unload, nicely fitting into the Christian working week. Then they moved over to a continuous feed system. Very un-Christian. But still a hell of a lot of physical labour for the poor sods who wrecked their backs and knees working the place. Just as tough as coal mining, I'm sure. But demand for lime was massive. An average small brick or stone cottage requires around 10 tonnes of mortar and 100 tonnes of brick. No railways at the time, so water transport was the only way of moving this mass of material around. In the 1830s, the quay and surrounding land was owned by the governors of Guy's Hospital. They ran the estate land around the quay as a hay business and made a handsome profit supplying the biggest horse-powered city the world has ever seen, London. In a wonderfully philanthropic arrangement, the money from the hay and lime business was ploughed into the hospital, located right in the centre of London's ever-growing East End slums. It was called benign capitalism. Don't know what happened to that then. The stones for the quay came from the old London Bridge. You know, the one with the buildings on it. Nowadays, Beaumont is a great secluded overnight spot for us shallow keelers. A place for crab fishing and a location for that latest fad of the upper middle classes, wild swimming. The 1 kilometre canal is a fabulous place for an aquatic workout. Time to explore Harwich Haven. It's the only decent deep-water harbour between the Thames and the Humber. It's been a major shipping port for 700 years, and you can see why. Nature gave the old port of Harwich shelter from every wind direction. The town has had a lighthouse for centuries, and down along the shore at Dovercourt, the leading lights are an engineering triumph. Because getting big ships into and out of Harwich has always been a bit of a challenge. Hence the pilot boats. It's also a place where light vessels wait to be given their annual overhaul by the itinerant mechanics on board the travelling repair ship.
Radio Sunshine, the home of happy hits.
One of the light vessels is sporting a crazy paint job because it was used as a prop in a truly terrible film about a pirate radio station. Just goes to show that even Richard Curtis can't win them all.
Sadly, with this boat though, it's fallen into the wrong hands.
There's also a purpose-built and really serious ocean-going steel yacht at anchor that now needs a new owner because this one has clearly lost interest in it, or maybe he's just run out of money. The problem with the old sheltered part of the haven is that it clogged up with mud as quickly as they could dredge it. So now Harwich has a really impressive neighbour in the shape of Britain's largest container port, just across the way at Felixstowe. You have to admit the engineering is pretty impressive. Not particularly beautiful, because when it comes to cranes, it's always the triumph of function over form. Always has been, right from Harwich's 400-year-old wheel crane to these monsters. The only concession to aesthetics is often just the choice of the colour of the paint. Felixstowe is a 24-hour, 7 days a week port, so it's always busy. Then added to this mix is all the Ipswich shipping passing up and down the Orwell, and the ferries from Harwich, so there's a lot of commercial stuff to avoid, and in my case enjoy watching.
Push! Push!
I always thought being a tug captain would be a pretty good job. Still love to have a go. The other thing about Harwich is that, particularly at weekends, it gets really busy with yachts from the backwaters of the Stour and the Orwell. So if you like a bit of variety when it comes to boat watching, then Harwich Harbour is pretty hard to beat. You can see everything from the world's largest container ships to some of the oldest sailing vessels in Britain.
Very nice!
From classics to the less than classic. And the recreational yachtsmen, this is amazing, most of them, like me, completely without any formal navigational qualifications, somehow manage to generally stay out of the way of the big stuff. And that's despite having to deal with the haven's ferocious and capricious tidal streams.
Look at this water pouring out here.
Google Earth lets you see the way that the turbid, mud-laden currents swirl around the entrance to the two rivers. All in all, it's a pretty entertaining place for a sail. It's also nice to be able to turn the corner and follow the tide past the wind farm dock and leave all the excitement behind and head up into one of the most chilled rivers on the east coast, the Stour.
on your face as you shrug your beautiful shoulders as if to say, it's a shame.